You walk into the DMV expecting the same process you have done for decades. Short line, quick eye check, fresh photo, and you are on your way. But this time, something feels wrong. Curious, the questions are different. The paperwork does not look familiar. The clerk pauses, looks at your file a little longer than expected, and suddenly you are being told you need additional testing and possibly even medical authorization. Just like that, what should have taken 20 minutes turns into hours. And worse, you leave without a renewed license. Frustrated, no warning, no preparation, just confusion and a growing question in your mind. What changed? Because something has changed. Quietly across the country, new DMV regulations have been rolling out. Regulations that are catching drivers over 65 completely by surprise. And here's the problem. Most people do not find out until they are already standing at the counter under pressure with no time to fix it. Some are being asked to pass new types of vision tests they have never encountered before. Others are losing access to online renewals entirely. And in some cases, people are being told they now need a physician's approval just to keep driving. The worst part, one small misstep, one missing document, one failed screening, and you could be sent home without your license, stuck in a process you did not even know existed. Today on US Visa and Green Card Info, I am going to walk you through exactly what is happening so you are not one of those people caught by surprise. Because this is not about fear, it is about preparation. In the next few minutes, I will break down the 3 major regulation changes affecting drivers over 65, explain why they are happening, and most importantly, show you exactly what you can do right now to avoid delays, extra costs, or losing your driving privileges altogether. And there is one change in particular that is surprising a lot of people, not because it is new, but because of how much stricter it has become. Once you understand that, everything else starts to make a lot more sense, and it could save you a major headache the next time you walk into the DMV. Before we get into the first regulation, it is important to understand why all of this is happening in the first place, because without that context, these changes can feel random, frustrating, even unfair. The reality is they did not come out of nowhere. Over the past several years, transportation and safety agencies have been tracking patterns in roadway incidents, and one trend started getting attention. Certain types of accidents were increasing among older drivers, particularly those over 75. Not reckless driving, not speeding, but situations tied to things like reduced peripheral vision, slower reaction time, and difficulty seeing clearly in low light conditions. Now, that does not mean older drivers are unsafe. In fact, many are far more experienced and cautious than younger drivers. But from a policy standpoint, states began looking at how to reduce risk in very specific scenarios. And that is what led to the changes you are seeing now. So when you walk into the DMV and things feel stricter, it is not arbitrary. It is part of a broader shift toward more detailed evaluations. And that brings us to the first major regulation change, which is catching more people by surprise than anything else right now. Enhanced vision screening. Now, if you are thinking, I have been doing vision tests at the DMV for years. You are absolutely right. But what has changed is the depth of that test. It is no longer just about reading letters or numbers off a chart. In many states, especially for drivers over 65, the screening now goes several layers deeper. They are looking at your peripheral vision, how well you can see things off to the side without turning your head. They are measuring depth perception, which affects how accurately you judge distance between vehicles. And there is one category that is becoming especially important: contrast sensitivity. That is your ability to distinguish objects from their background, particularly in low-light situations. Think about driving at dusk, in the rain, or spotting a pedestrian wearing dark clothing at night. You might technically have good vision on a standard chart, but if your contrast sensitivity is reduced, those real-world situations become much more challenging. And that is exactly what these new screenings are designed to detect. Here is where this becomes very real for you. If you do not pass one part of this enhanced screening, you will not necessarily walk out with a renewed license that day. Instead, you may be given a conditional approval, meaning you will have to schedule a full eye exam with a licensed specialist, have them complete specific paperwork, and submit it back to the DMV before your renewal can be finalized. That process can take weeks. It can involve extra appointments, additional costs, and a lot more time than most people expect. And this is where many people run into trouble. They assume it will be quick, show up unprepared, and then get stuck in a delay they could have avoided entirely. So, here is the practical move that makes all the difference. Do not let the DMV be the first place your vision gets tested. If your license renewal is coming up within the next few months, schedule a comprehensive eye exam ahead of time. Ask specifically about peripheral vision and contrast sensitivity. If there is an issue, you will have time to address it, whether that is updated lenses or treatment before it becomes a problem at the counter. That one step alone can turn a stressful, uncertain experience into a smooth, predictable one. And if you are finding this helpful so far, make sure you are following along because these kinds of updates can change quickly, and staying ahead of them is what protects your independence. Now, as impactful as this vision regulation is, it is only the first piece of the puzzle. The second change is the one that is quietly reshaping the entire renewal process. And for many people, it is turning what used to be simple into something far more demanding. The second regulation change is where the experience really starts to shift. And for many people, this is the moment where a routine renewal turns into something much more time-consuming and frankly frustrating. For years, a lot of drivers got used to the convenience of renewing their license online or through the mail. No lines, no waiting rooms, no rearranging your entire day. But for drivers over 65, that convenience is disappearing in a growing number of states. More and more states are now requiring in-person renewal once you reach a certain age. And in some places, that does not just mean showing up. It also means doing it more often. Instead of renewing every 8 years, you might now be required to renew every 4 years or even every 2. That is a major shift, especially when you factor in travel time, wait times, and the energy it takes to go through the entire process. And it is not just about being physically present. When you walk into the DMV now, you are expected to come fully prepared, and the margin for error is smaller than it used to be. You will typically need multiple forms of identification. Your current license, proof of residency, like a recent utility bill or bank statement, and sometimes additional documents like a social security card or passport. And here is where people get tripped up. What counts as acceptable proof can vary. Something as simple as bringing the wrong type of document can mean getting turned away and having to start all over again. But there is another layer to this that most people do not realize, and it is one of the biggest reasons this regulation matters so much. During in-person renewals, DMV staff are now trained to make informal observations. They are not just processing paperwork. They are paying attention. They are noticing how you move, how you respond to questions, whether you seem confused by instructions, or if you are having difficulty completing forms. It is subtle, but it is intentional. If something raises concern, they have the authority to require additional steps before approving your license. That could mean taking a road test, even if you have not taken one in decades. It could mean getting medical authorization from your doctor. In some cases, it could even mean restrictions placed on when or where you are allowed to drive. Now, this is not about catching people by surprise. It is about assessment. But if you do not know what is happening, it can feel exactly like that. So, here is how you stay ahead of it. Treat your DMV visit like something you prepare for, not something you squeeze into your day. Bring every required document in an organized folder. Give yourself extra time so you are not rushed or stressed. Answer questions clearly and take your time filling out forms. And if you use any kind of mobility support, a cane, a walker, use it confidently. It is far better to be seen moving safely than struggling without assistance. Because when you approach it prepared and composed, the entire experience changes. You are no longer reacting. You are in control. Now, as impactful as this second regulation is, the third one is where things become much more personal. This is the regulation that is creating the most confusion, the most delays, and in some cases, the most difficult decisions. Because now, it is not just the DMV evaluating you. It is your physician. In a growing number of states, drivers over a certain age, often 70 or 75, are now required to submit medical certification as part of their license renewal. And this is not just a quick note saying you are in good health. This is a detailed state-issued form that your physician has to complete addressing specific aspects of your physical and cognitive condition and how they relate to your ability to drive safely. They are looking at things like diabetes, especially if there is a risk of low blood sugar episodes, cardiovascular conditions such as a history of heart concerns or stroke, neurological concerns, including memory issues or early cognitive decline, sleep disorders, medications that may cause drowsiness, even anxiety or discomfort treatments that could affect reaction time. It is thorough and it is taken seriously. And here is the key point. Your physician is legally and ethically responsible for what they put on that form. That means they are not going to simply sign off unless they are confident in your ability to drive safely. If they have concerns, they are required to document them, and that can lead to additional steps, restrictions, or closer monitoring from the DMV. This is where a lot of people feel blindsided. Maybe you have been managing a condition for years without any issues. Maybe you feel perfectly capable behind the wheel. But if something on that form raises a flag, your renewal process can suddenly become much more complicated than expected. So the smartest way to handle this is to be proactive. Do not wait until the DMV tells you that you need medical authorization. If your state requires it, or even if you are not sure, schedule a dedicated appointment with your physician ahead of time. Let them know exactly what the form is for. Give them the space to evaluate properly and have an open, honest conversation about your driving. If they do have concerns, do not treat it as a dead end. Ask questions. Find out what specifically can be improved or managed. In many cases, there are solutions. Adjusting medication timing, updating vision prescriptions, or simply limiting driving to certain conditions like daytime hours. The goal is not to take away your independence. It is to preserve it safely for as long as possible. And when you approach it that way, this process becomes far less intimidating and far more manageable. Now, before you start worrying that all of these regulations apply to you exactly as we have described them, there is something important you need to understand, and this is where a lot of confusion comes from. These changes are not identical across the country. Every state runs its own DMV system, which means the details, how strict the vision test is, when in-person renewal is required, whether medical certification applies, can vary depending on where you live. In one state, you might not face any of these changes until age 70. In another, they could start at 65. Some states require medical forms only under certain conditions, while others make it a standard part of renewal after a certain age. And then there are states that have not fully implemented these regulations yet, but are moving in that direction. So if you have heard someone say, "I just renewed my license and none of this happened," they might be telling the truth, but they might also be in a completely different state with different requirements. That is why relying on secondhand information can get you into trouble. What matters is not what is happening broadly. It is what applies specifically to you. And once you understand that, the next step becomes very clear. You do not guess. You do not assume. You verify. Because the people who run into problems at the DMV are usually the ones who walk in thinking it will be business as usual. The ones who do not check ahead. The ones who assume they will figure it out when they get there. And by that point, it is too late to fix anything quickly. So, let us talk about what actually works. What you can do right now to make sure your next renewal goes smoothly from start to finish. First, go directly to your state's DMV website or call their official number. Look specifically for license renewal requirements based on your age group, not general renewal guidelines, your age group. If anything is unclear, call and ask. And when you do, write down exactly what they tell you, including the date and the name of the person you spoke with. That way, you are not relying on memory or guesswork. Second, give yourself time, more time than you think you need. A good guideline is to start preparing at least 3 to 4 months before your license expires. That gives you room to schedule appointments, gather documents, and handle any unexpected requirements without pressure. Waiting until the last minute is where most of the stress and mistakes happen. Third, organize everything in advance. Put your documents in one place. Your current license, proof of residency, social security documentation if required, and any medical or vision paperwork. Use a folder, label it clearly, and keep it somewhere easy to access. It sounds simple, but this one step alone can save you from making multiple trips. Fourth, if there is any chance you will need a vision exam or medical authorization, schedule those appointments early. Do not wait until the DMV tells you. You want those results ready before you even walk in. And if this is helping you think a step or two ahead, consider sharing this with someone else who might be going through the same thing. A lot of people are walking into this process unprepared simply because no one told them what changed, because once you take these steps, everything shifts. You are no longer reacting to surprises. You are anticipating them. You are walking into the DMV knowing exactly what is expected with everything you need already in hand. And that is the difference between a stressful experience and a smooth one. But there is one more piece to this that matters just as much as preparation. And it is something most people do not talk about until they are forced to face it. It is the emotional side of all of this, and what these changes really mean when you step back and look at the bigger picture. Now, let us talk about the part that does not show up on any DMV form, but matters just as much as everything we have covered so far. Because for a lot of people, this is not just about paperwork or policies. It is about independence. It is about the freedom to go where you want when you want without relying on anyone else. And when new regulations start making that feel uncertain, it is completely natural to feel frustrated, even a little uneasy. If you have been driving safely for decades, it can feel like these changes are questioning your ability, your experience, even your judgment. You have followed the guidelines, taken care of your vehicle, avoided accidents, and now suddenly there are extra steps, extra scrutiny, extra hoops to jump through. That reaction is real and it is valid. But here is the other side of it, and it is just as important to acknowledge. Driving has always come with responsibility, not just for yourself, but for everyone else on the road. And as conditions change, whether it is vision, reaction time, or health, those responsibilities do not go away. They become more important. What these new regulations are really trying to do at their core is reduce risk before something serious happens, not after, before. And while the process may feel inconvenient, even frustrating at times, the intention is to keep people safe, including you. And here is something that does not get said often enough. For some people, these evaluations will reveal that certain adjustments need to be made. Maybe it is avoiding night driving. Maybe it is sticking to familiar routes. Or in some cases, having an honest conversation about whether it is still safe to be behind the wheel at all. That is not a failure. That is judgment. That is experience. That is knowing when to adapt in a way that protects you and everyone around you. Because the reality is the consequences of ignoring those signs can be far more serious than any DMV requirement. And the people who handle this transition best are the ones who approach it with awareness, not resistance. So instead of seeing these changes as something being taken away, think of them as something you can navigate with the right preparation, the right mindset, and the right information. And that brings us back to where we started. The difference between walking into the DMV confident and walking out confused often comes down to what you knew before you got there. Now you know what has changed. You know what to expect. And more importantly, you know exactly what to do next. Take a few minutes today, just a few, and check your state's requirements. Look at your license expiration date. Start preparing early if it is coming up soon. Get your documents in order. Schedule any appointments you might need. Do it now while there is no pressure, because when the time comes, you will not be guessing. You will not be scrambling. You will be ready. And that is how you protect not just your license, but your independence, your confidence, and your peace of mind every time you get behind the wheel.